Good morning and good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. So welcome to the joint seminar webinar co-organized by African Union Development Agency, AUDA-NEPAD, and its platform, a Policy Bridge Tank, and JICA, Japan International Cooperation Agency, Ogata Research Institute for Peace and Development, co-organized by AUDA-NEPAD and JICA. Webinar, it is on the industry engagement in TVET, technical and vocational education training, especially experience from East Asia, how East Asian countries learned and localized foreign modules in technical education. So this is the topic. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Toru Honma, speaking from South Africa in Midrand. I am a senior advisor to the CEO of AUDA-NEPAD, and also a JICA senior advisor on private sector development. So I will do the moderator and co-moderator. So together with my colleague Pamela, so later on. But I'm honored to do the moderation for the first part of this webinar event, a 1 hour and a half event. So AUDA-NEPAD and JICA have been doing the long-lasting diversified cooperation in many areas. One of them is research area. Between the both agencies' research arms, as I mentioned, Policy Bridge Tank from AUDA-NEPAD, and also Ogata Research Institute from JICA. And so we have done a similar format, the webinar, and this is the third of the series. So today's event is something like this. First, by opening remarks, then we are going to have the two prominent speakers, two presentations on Vietnam and Thailand, two cases. Then after that, there is one bridging intervention. Then we will have the prominent discussants from Africa. And we are going to have comments from the two discussants. Then discussion among the speakers. Finally, open the floor for the question and answer for further discussion. Then finalized by the closing remarks. This is the format. So I'm going to introduce for the opening remarks. The speaker is Ms. Pamela Gopal. She's my colleague, and she's a lead coordinator of economic analysis and foresight unit of AUDA-NEPAD. And she's actually leading this platform of Policy Bridge Tank. Pamela, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning and hello. Thank you, Mr. Honma-san, for that introduction, and greetings and a warm welcome to you all. For those who we are engaging with for the first time this year, we wish you well for this year and a very productive new year. On behalf of our CEO, Mrs. Monodzukuri Thomas, we are thrilled that you have joined us today for this enlightening webinar. As we continue to strengthen our intellectual partnership with Japan, in particular with JICA, and continue to, and we are proud to share that the JICA Ogata Research Institute for Peace and Development, as well as the AUDA-NEPAD Policy Bridge Tank, have previously held sessions of this nature, and we are happy to inform you that this is the third of our book launch. We have in the past launched 2 books, and it with a focus of policy learning and industrial development and the role of development cooperation, as well as another book on promoting the quality and productivity improvement of Kaizen in Africa. So as I've mentioned, that today is our third book launch on the title Introducing Foreign Models for Development, the Japanese Experience and Cooperation in the Age of New Technology is the title of the book. Our focus for this webinar would be on development of industrial human resources, which is a crucial priority for numerous countries, particularly in Africa. where addressing youth employment is high on the agenda. We will draw from Japan's wealth of experience in supporting industrial human resource development in developing countries, and we aim to leverage these experiences to build momentum and continue our good work. We will be sharing 2 East Asian examples promoting industrial engagement in Vietnam, as well as learning and localizing industrial technologies in Thailand. These cases are featured in the recently launched book introducing, as I said, the book that we will discuss today, Foreign Models for Development, the Japanese Experience Corporation in the Age of New Technology, which is published by the JICA Ogata Research Institute. We definitely recognize the critical need to generate productive employment opportunities for Africa's increasing youth population. And we cordially invite you to engage in our discussion today. We believe that these experiences from East Asia will provide valuable insights and contribute to the co-creation of practical knowledge for industrial development in Africa. Your participation today would be undoubtedly rich, and the conversation we are looking for as we eagerly look forward to your valuable contributions. So I invite you now. I welcome you first to this 3rd book launch, and I invite you to embark on this journey of learning as we grow together. I thank you, and over to you, Mr. Omasan.
Thank you, Pamela. So for your opening remarks. Yes, now we are going to have a 2 presentation. Yes, as Pamela mentioned, this is a book which we are based, and this is published just last October. And so we are going to have the refer frequently on this book. If you are interested in, so please have a look. And the first speaker, Dr. Junichi Mori. So he's a very good expert on the especially TVET, technical education. So he has a lot of experiences. He's just until recently the former chief technical advisor for the Skills for Prosperity program in Malaysia, in ILO, International Labor Organization. And prior to that position, so he was also he has been working in UNIDO and JICA as well. So his research and professional work focuses on skill development and industrialization in developing countries, particularly in the Southeast Asia region. So he's the, I think, most fit persons to speak on this topic. The Dr. Mori, the floor is yours for 15 minutes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Homma, for very comprehensive introduction. And then thank you very much for Ms. Pamela for also the great opening remarks. Let me share my presentation first. So good evening and then good morning for all. And then thank you for AUDA-NEPAD and then JICA Ogata Research Institute for giving me this wonderful and exciting opportunity for the knowledge sharing. I'm Junichi, and then I think you already understand my background from Mr. Homma. While today's topic is the skills I still need to improve is a time management skill for presentation. So anytime, please stop me if I'm speaking too long, because there's another exciting presentation by the Professor Ono. So today's topic is industry engagement in Tibet in Vietnam, based on research which I have done when I was working for the JICA Research Institute. And then this is the agenda. I will explain the common challenge for the industry engagement in Tibet, and then move to what JICA has done in Vietnam, and then what the challenge is, and then what is the lesson learned. So let me start from the section for the common challenge for skills development and then Tibet. So let me list the common challenges related to the TVET in many regions or countries. Of course, there are the difference between a region, but according to my experience, we are facing always the same challenges, like insufficient quality of the TVET program, weak industry engagement in the TVET, which is the main topic of today, lack of the skills need information, or how we can get the future skills needs. So many studies and policy discussion focus on the supply side issues. Let's say like quality of TVET is not enough, TVET is not making enough effort, but actually we also need to think about the demand side issues, like whether industry is really requiring a lot of the skilled workers or not. So to solve these issues, we need to look at both sides. That's something I'll come back later. So and then how many countries or regions are dealing the problem related to the TVET. I listed the key policy trends related to skills development at TVET, like lifelong learning, quality apprenticeship. Those are the issues we try to address when I was in ILO in Malaysia. Also, like a flexible training model, there are a lot of discussion about the micro-credential recognition of prior learning because now people prefer the short-term training. And then also the digital talent development and then digitalization and TVET and so on. Then, since the time is limited, let me jump to the situation in Vietnam, industry engagement in TVET in Vietnam. I used to work in Vietnam about 7 years, and then another 7 years in Malaysia. So those are my sort of a second home countries. So what is the policy direction in Vietnam at this moment? Same as many countries, probably same in many African countries too. Of course, our government of Vietnam is making a lot of effort to improve the TVET. They try to improve the labor market information system, promote the employers training initiative, also like promoting the industry-led TVET, and then sector skills council, competency-based training, and so on. So actually, these are the standard measures of the so-called employer-led skills formation system, which is created primarily in the developed countries. It's a great model, and then it's promoted as an international best practice. But the question is always how we can adapt it in developing countries, considering like a social, economic, and then other contexts. In case of Vietnam, there are a lot of the policy related to the TVET or supply side issues, but a few policy effectively intervene in the demand side. Of course, the government implement a lot of the industrial policy, but this effectiveness is always questioned. And then more importantly, the skills policy and the industrial policies are not sufficiently integrated. That's the issue. So challenges for the industry engagement in Vietnam's TVET systems. If I just simplify, government made a lot of the effort. TVET institutions also making a lot of effort, but they still struggle to involve companies in improving the TVET program. So then there are some cooperation, but many partnership between the companies and then TVET institutions still remain quite a preliminary level, like recruitment activity or unsystematic employment related activities such as job fairs. I developed these figures based on my experience. Maybe you can question theoretically, but basically, industry TVET institution partnership developed in this sort of a basic 6-step, starting from recruitment, employer support, capacity development of the students and then the teachers, and then maybe the most advanced step is a joint research. However, in Vietnam, many TVET institutions' cooperation with industry is still at the early stages. So this indicates Vietnam is, as I said, Vietnam is adapting the standard measures of the employer-led skills formation system. But the fact is that these measures focus on a general improvement of the regulatory framework or business environment are sort of a high-level framework issues. So however, in order to make this system work and then deliver the result, framework is also important, but it is also important to develop capacity of the respective TVET institutions. In other words, approach to improving the framework should be complemented by approach to enhance ingredients such as a key institution. What do I really mean by that? Maybe you can learn more from the Professor Ono's presentation or our book too. So in this context, what JICA has done in Vietnam, together with the Hanoi University of Industry, which is a national partners in Vietnam for TVET. So by the way, I often call the Hanoi University of Industry as a HAUI, just for your information. This is an overview of the Hanoi University of Industry, implementing partner of the JICA's project for the TVET in Vietnam. So I don't go through the detail, but I just want to emphasize only one point. Hanoi University of Industry, or HAUI, provide both higher education and then TVET course. So JICA has implemented three projects with the Hanoi University of Industry, but I engaged with the second project, which is called the Project for Human Resource Development of the Technician at the Hanoi University of Industry, which was implemented from 2010 to 2013. So objective was to assist HAUI to develop the management system to upgrade its training and the educational program based on industry needs. And then the project aimed to deliver the three outputs, but today's presentation focused on the first output, development of the training process management system. What is a training management system? I guess you know a lot about the Kaizen already from my previous colleagues, like Honma-san or Jin-san. So the training process management is another name is a PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act models. Maybe this may be the more familiar to you. So PDCA often used to improve the productivity or quality in a company. By the way, I used to work for the electronic manufacturing company too, but we also need a similar thing for the TVET too. So that is what the Japanese vocational training institution tried to implement it through the late 1990s. So the PDCA or training process management system start from the grasping the industry needs, developing a curriculum based on the needs, implementation, doing the evaluation, developing the action plan, and then come back to the beginning. So the point is a constant engagement of the employer is a core of this system. I cannot explain everything about what we have done in a project, but let me explain something related to grasping or understanding industry skills needs. Together with our partner, Hanoi University of Industry, project implemented the industry skills needs surveys. So project was 3 years. First year, we visited about 100 enterprises and then about 70 each for the second and then third years. Then actually the survey was done by the HAUI instructors or teachers or staff, not by the external consultant. That we insisted because by doing the survey or interview by the TVET instructors, usually we can get more information. So the result of the survey was reflected to the improvement of the training program. For example, we developed a new course for the machinery maintenance. Like we implemented the 5S in the TVET institution. I understand that you are doing a lot of the 5S in the TVET institution in Africa too. And then we also developed a new course for the quality control too. But also, HAUI staff or instructor also learned how to develop a partnership with industry too. So they understand when companies are likely to be interested in cooperating with the HAUI. When we talk about the industry engagement in the TVET, we need to understand the reality. First, companies are not always eager to cooperate with TVET institution, to be honest. So timing is quite important. What I found is the beginning, when a company is establishing and then stabilizing their operations, they often focus on the core professional staff, like managers, admin staff, engineers, and so on. So, but later stage, the demand for the intermediate workers, like technicians, are increasing. So, for example, when companies are stabilizing their operation, when we try to get develop a partnership with company, maybe they say, "Oh no, we are not ready," but later they may be ready. So it's a simple thing, but we need to understand that timing is important. Also, through the project, Hanoi University Industry staff understand what type of the companies are likely to be interested in cooperating with the university or Hanoi University of Industry. Again, in general discussion in Vietnam, many people say TVET is important. They need a skilled worker. They need a TVET graduate. But when we are visiting individual company, some of the company may say, to be honest, we don't need a TVET graduate. That's a reality. But some of them say, yes, we need a TVET graduate. So we need to understand who are really demanding the TVET graduate. So then in case of the HAUI, we found a supplier, part supplier, especially those producing small lot goods in a non-routine process, pay higher attention to intermediate workers. That's a tendency because this graph shows a proportion of the, occupational employment structure of the selected companies. So what we found is it's a simple thing again, but part suppliers, or particularly those who produce high-valued small lot goods, actually they employ the more skilled workers inside. Also, we try to develop a two-way interaction for the industry engagement. We visited many companies, but we try to encourage the company to visit Hanoi University of Industry. That's the reason why we didn't need to visit so many companies in the second and third years. So second example of the project activity is the institutional mechanism. First step for the institutional mechanism development for industry engagement is information sharing. Maybe you understand, like if you are working for the TVET institutions, sometimes some people, faculty or center, they just keep the information, like which company ask or what, they just keep those information, they don't share. That could easily happen. So we promoted the information sharing across the faculty centers. And then the second step, Hanoi University of Industry established the Industry Partnership Board as a platform for the industry engagement at the institutional level. Then after the completion of the HAUI JICA project, Hanoi University of Industry established a Center for Enterprise Development, so-called CPA. So another thing I want to emphasize is that through the project, of course, a colleague from the Hanoi University of Industry accumulated the knowledge, but they developed the confidence by accumulating small successes. So in other sense, like in the beginning, there was a negative or a spiral of the industry engagement. HAUI staff are not very confident. That's why they couldn't develop a partnership with the industry. But accumulating a small success, even very small success, like they request a meeting with the enterprise happily accept the appointment, or they say like provide a very positive feedback for the HAUI, like their interns or students are very good. Those help HAUI staff to develop a partnership with more and more companies because they become increasingly confident. So let me explain what happened after the HAUI JICA project. So after that, I also left. So it is natural. Some of the activity continues, some of the activity discontinued, to be honest. For example, like HAUI implemented more short-term training course. They enlarged or they made a job fair in the large scale, like 100 company and then many Japanese company too. But for example, they couldn't continue some activity like in-company training for the lecturers. So today's important topic is a translative adaptation. So I want to show the two cases for the case of the adaptation by the HAUI from my understanding, but based on the interview result. First is a learning industry skills needs through the partnership activity. As I explained, what we have done in a project is an industry skills survey and then try to understand their needs. But after the project completed, HAUI focus more to learn the industry skills needs through the actual activity, internship, short-term training course, networking with the alumni, rather than the formal industry skills survey. So this is a way to get the industry skills needs, and they then consider it is more feasible for them. And also they consider short-term course or tailor-made course for the company. It's a very good option to learn industry skills needs, which is actually true. But the one thing they change is naturally when I was there, I helped HAUI to develop the partnership with many Japanese company. After the project completed, they try to find many new clients, non-Japanese foreign invested enterprises. So second case of the adaptation is the institutional institution for the industry engagement. HAUI strengthens the capacity of the Center for Enterprise Partnership, CPA, like adding more staff, but they improve the internal coordination mechanism more. The senior management of the HAUI issues the internal policy to all the faculty, like they ask all the faculty to recognize CPA as a focal point for the industry engagement, like a single window. This is one thing. But also I found regulation or policy is important, but itself doesn't work if people don't recognize the value of the information sharing. So, but some faculties increasingly recognize the benefit of the sharing the information from the inquiry from company with the CPA. That was a change they made after the project. On the other hand, what is the challenge? Sorry, I think I'm running out of time. Not all the stories are beautiful. Many government officials, industry recognize the Hanoi University of Industry model is very good. However, some people say it is possible because of the Hanoi University of Industry. So that means that the dissemination of the model is rather limited. So possible reason is a capacity difference between Hanoi University of Industry and then TVET institution. It includes the coordination capacity, but also the technical hard infrastructure, like what sort of the machine or machine tool they have. Second is a lack of the government support. Government support HAUI, but there's some internal ministerial coordination issues. Hanoi University of Industry is under the Ministry of Industry and Trade. TVET is under Ministry of Labor side. So sometimes this coordination is becoming a difficulty for HAUI. Also, the timing to involve the government to create the industry engagement model was relatively late. So like HAUI develop a model and then they share the model with the government as a good example. So maybe the ministry or government consider it is a model created by HAUI, not by them. So concluding remarks, sorry, give me 1 minute. So HAUI selected the Japanese training process management system, but they customized or adjusted. And then the result of the project is an enhancement of the ingredient of the industry engagement. However, after that, HAUI developed a framework. So it means the ingredient first and then framework later. That happened. Why HAUI could develop a partnership with the industry? Their initiative supported by the pragmatism, persistence, including a continuous self-learning. So of course, we suggested a lot of the solution, but basically they implemented something suitable for their development stage. And then also they really emphasize the importance of the self-learning. So finally, I want to emphasize, this is my last slide, the translative adaptation is a dynamic process. As I said, Hanoi University of Industry adopted the Japanese training management system, although they also run other models like competency-based training, DAICAM, and then others, because they thought that model is feasible and then suitable for at the current at that stage of the development, but they are running other models. So they are still in the process of the translative adaptation. Probably they may fully adapt the Japanese training management system, but since they already have a lot of the industry partner, they may go back to the full CBT model or try to do more like utilize the DAICA model more. That could be the second option. Third option is they may create a unique models, which is also okay because actually, the importance is not which model they adopt, but they strengthen the industry engagement in TVET. So this is all my presentation, and then any questions are welcome. Again, thank you very much, and then thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Mori-san, Dr. Mori, for your comprehensive and also very practical presentation based on his actual experience in Vietnam, especially Hanoi University of Industry. So he's also talking about, especially talking about the industry engagement, how it comes and how it evolves even after the project. And also how can and lead this experience from the aspects of translative adaptation. So there are many takeaways I would like to introduce in later my intervention. So thank you very much, Dr. Mori. So next, the second speaker, the Professor Izumi Ono. She's talking about Thailand. Professor Ono is from the GRIPS, National Graduating Institute for Policy Studies in Tokyo and Japan. And she's also a senior research advisor at JICA Ogata Research Institute and former director. Yes, so she's actually bridging all the academies and so the practical development issues. And also she's leading the various research projects, including the Japanese experience of industrial development and development cooperation. Actually, this is the basis of all these the studies which we are discussing today. So I'm also, I have been working very closely together with or as a team of Professor Ono for this, the industrial development and also the industrial policy, whatever. So without further ado, so I'd like to introduce Professor Ono. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honma-san, for very passionate the introduction. I always count on your really passion and also that ability to implement, getting things done. So let me share my screen. Okay. Okay. Is this okay? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I am going to talk about Thailand's experience of learning industrial technology and Monodzukuri education with localization. Monodzukuri means making things or manufacturing in Japanese terminologies. Okay, next. Okay. Okay. As Pamela-san and also the Honma-san already introduced, so this Mori-san's chapter and also my presentation coming from the recent publication for introducing foreign models for development. And Mori-san's chapter is chapter 6, and what I'm going to present is the chapter 8. Okay. And this, assuming the knowledge is important for the development, this book presents the method and case studies with how foreign models of economic development can be learned and also localized, suitable to the countries. So the key concept is the translative adaptation, which consists of 3 steps. First, learning from benchmarking country selectively, then adapt and internalize, and then create your own model and disseminate. These are basic steps for the translative adaptation. And then we are discussing today for the industrial human resource development for the various methodology for how to enhance those things. So I will talk about first, what are the key issues on industrial human resource development? And then I will focus on 2 institutions in Thailand, Technology Promotion Association, TPA, and then Thai Nichi Institute of Technology, TNI. Then I will explain 5 stages of development they have gone through, and then what are the key factors for their success. And then I will touch upon implication for industrial human resource development in Africa. So public-private partnership is vitally important to enhance employability and productivity of the workforce. So human resource development that matches industry needs, such as through TVET industry engagement, FDI local farm linkage building, those are very much critical. For example, in the case of FDI local farm linkage building, 5S and Kaizen are very crucial if you want to work with the Japanese companies. At the same time, how to develop training and educational institutions which produce qualified local people that match those industry needs, and also how to ensure their financial and operational sustainabilities. These are critical issues. This diagram shows that mapping the various opportunity for education and training through pre-employment education to the post-employment on the labor market with a workplace-specific knowledge or more general knowledge. And we are talking today about more higher education TVET and also some training offered for the company people by external institutions. And then the Thailand experience is about how to promote technology and also technical education by learning and localizing Japanese-style manufacturing Monodzukuri by looking at TPA, which is post-employment education and linkage building with FDI and practical knowledge for the workplace. And then another is a TNI, which is university pre-employment education with TVET industry linkages. Of course, there are many institutions or universities in Thailand which work for human resource development, but because of this specific maybe nature of these two institutions, it's a private initiative and also led by Thai alumni who studied in Japanese universities or Japanese training, technical training. And then they had a network with Japanese industry, academia, government institutions. This is why I have been focusing on this example. To give a background, Thailand and Japan has been a long-term Monodzukuri partners. Thailand is now upper middle income countries with about 7,000 per capita GNI. And then Thailand has transformed during 1980s from agriculture, main centered country to the manufacturing centered countries. So currently manufacture account for 30% of the Thai economy, and also their export, 70% of the export of goods for the manufacturing. And then Japan has been a major the partner in Thailand, and then you can see this blue of the accumulation of the Japanese cumulative kind of that FDI. Although recently ASEAN countries and also China has been increasing also investment in China, in Thailand. So let me explain one by one these two institutions. So TPA, Technology Promotion Association, is an NPO established in 1973 by the initiative of Thai students and ex-trainees who studied in Japan, particularly engineering universities, and also NPO is AOTS, which focus on technical training in linking with the Japanese companies to promote the introduction and dissemination of the industrial technology from Japan for Thai people and also Thai enterprises. I have to mention that in 1970s, there was a growing anti-Japanese movement in Southeast Asia because there are massive export of Japanese products in Thailand or Southeast Asian country, which was thought by the threat of maybe Japanese economic invasion in Southeast Asian countries. So based on this recognition, Japanese government and also Japanese private sector started to work for industrial human resource development in many Asian countries. And JTEX, which is Japan Thailand Economic Cooperation Society was one of the NPO which is serving to facilitate the Thailand-Japan industrial human resource development by channeling both ODA and private sector resources. And currently, this TPA offers various range of activity like language, education, training, business consulting, calibration services, publication, multimedia, production center, etc. And this is the institutional setting, how it started. So those students who studied in Japan, Thai student, and then those who received training in Japan, started to set up this TPA with also support of Thai and Japanese company in Thailand. Also, this has been supported by the JTEX with the support of Japanese companies and also Japanese government that the money initially. Okay. This picture shows how they started. And also, this is their building in 1978, 75, and 1998. They had new offices. Also, TNI University was also opened later to 2007. And these are the kinds of services TPA provides, like Sindan, enterprise diagnosis and consulting, calibration, publication of technical books, and also TPA provide a robot context, etc. This also gives you an idea kinds of training programs they offer. They offer many training programs, including Kaizen, QC7 tools, or time management, the measurement decision, various things. So these are kind of the training programs they offer. It's a very much practical training. Regarding Thai Niche Institute of Technology, TNI, this was established in 2007 by TPA people as a technical education institute with an emphasis of field-oriented practical education for manufacturing and other industries. So this is created by the Thai people, for the Thai people, for the Monodzukuri universities. And it offers courses such like automobile, electronics, production technology, ICT, with an emphasis of practical knowledge, as I mentioned. So there are high employment rate, particularly for the Japanese company or affiliated companies in Thailand. At the same time, recently they are opening the new college called the Thai Niche International College, which is providing similar maybe training for Asian students, including Japanese. So this is TNI. They have a job fair. They have a language program, a speech context. Former Prime Minister Abe is also supportive, or they emphasize he had a kind of good contact with them. Sometimes that sharing that the books, etc. And this is TNI courses. As I said, they have 3 major pillars: engineering, information technology, business administration, with various courses offered. With recently, they have starting new international colleges too. They started in very small, about 400 students. Now they are totaling 4,000 students. Biannually, they have 1,000 students are taking. But it's not a big kind of universities. But they are focusing on this kind of Monodzukuri technologies. It is interesting to note that what this TNI extracted from maybe Japanese manufacturing, maybe spirit or technology, they extracted these 6 core values as a fundamental basis for learning the technical skill. So technical skill have to be supported by some kind of spiritual or ethics or mindset. So this, they said, KMHRHOP, that means Kaizen, continuous improvement, Monodzukuri, dedication, creativity, development, Hansei mean that accepting mistakes and reflection, learning from them. Respect yourself and others, honesty, public interest consciousness. So these are, they thought that which is very useful from maybe Japanese Monodzukuri spirit and can be a basis for the learning technology in Thailand. And also they put these 5 Gs of Monodzukuri, learning from the workplace, learning from actual work environment in real materials, learning from practical activities, learning from, at the same time, theories, learning from rules and regulation. So they took those ideas from Japanese style Monodzukuri and then created various programs. This is one of the program they have offered. This was created together with the Toyota companies. It is interesting that in the first and second year, they learn the language, Japanese and also English. Also, they learn these ethics, 6 core values, as a foundation for learning various technical skills. And then for third year and fourth years, they will start much more that practical project-based learning. So which include actual activities, design and development, internship with the private companies. And then they finish their data program. So these are kind of the design that they adapted from the Japanese way. So thinking about what they have done, I think they really took a very much strategic approach, which can be considered into the 5 stages of development. First, technology transfer. They learned from Japanese experts for various technology like Kaizen or Shindan, SME, consulting, etc. And they nurture, second, Thai expert through internalization and technology promotion while reducing dependence on the Japanese expert. So now they can teach by themselves for the Thai company or Thai people. Then technology diffusion, building capacity for local companies through training and consulting activities. Then technology education, which is establishment of TNI as a university to reaching out in the much more wider segment of the society, Thai young people. And then currently what they are doing is overseas expansion or innovation. So expanding their activity from Thailand to maybe Asian people, including Japanese. And they're also trying to integrate digital technology into maybe this Kaizen process. This visualizes these 5 stages. Okay. So I think we can say the first 3 stages is a translative adaptation stage, which I just mentioned from the beginning. But I think they beyond even more in stage 4 and then stage 5. Okay. Why they have been so much successful? What is the steps they took? So let me go maybe go through their chronogram. When that maybe TPA was established in Thailand, they have no maybe major resources. So they maybe Japanese ODA, Japanese private sector provide that kind of important financial and also technical support. But gradually, they started to think about that the publication, language training, and also what they have learned that the skill from Japan, they started to commercialize and then provide that the service or consulting service for the Thai people or Thai companies. And also calibration services, they are kind of started to provide at some particular point became so much importance because industry required a precision. And then they are now accounting for that the significant part of that calibration service in Thailand. So in that way, TPA people, when they started, they had a long-term vision, aspiration. They want to create eventually those university or educational institution. And then they took step by step. And then they also are mindful of how to mobilize the revenue while that reducing the financial dependency So when they started set up TNI, the Chinese Institute of Technologies, they borrowed from private bank, but by their own, based on the financial background. Okay. So when we evaluate their achievement from translative adaptation process, I have to say that these 2 institutions are successful example of introducing foreign model with localization. And then these 5-stage development can be seen as a further evolution of 3-stage process of translative adaptation, as I just mentioned. Maybe I will omit this part. So what are the success factors for their development? I would like to highlight 7 factors. First is strong ownership and existing of dedicated core professional on the Thai side. So Thai people who studied in Japanese universities or received technical training really had a strong kind of mindset and dedication to examination. And also they made TPA to kind of be financially independent, as I explained. And then also TPA have functioned as a social enterprises like an NPO. So core members with diverse affiliations, they studied different university, different backgrounds, they came back. Some of them worked in government, some of them worked for the university, some of them worked for industry, but they have a network and they shared aspiration and they made some suggestion and making that this TPA to function. So this flexibility and eagerness to develop new ideas and try to innovate that a new business is a very much important element for their successful development. And also they have created multifaceted human networks among industries, academia, government, maintaining also those networks in Japanese institutions. Fourth success factor is embedded incentive, mutually beneficial for both Thai and Japanese side. I think you need economic incentive for those services to be really continuous. So language courses is a Thai language course, Japanese languages course, calibration services, training consultancy. They are really very much effective and they had a demand. So they are able to respond to the demand from both Thai and Japanese companies. Also, I have to say the role of external support at that time facilitated this learning process. I think I talked about JTEX, which was created to really avoid, to reduce that anti-Japanese sentiment at that time and try to respect the Thai ownership and then try to maybe identify that let Thai side to kind of identify that the real needs and then try to be a sideline. Mr. Hozumi Goichi, who is a founder of JTEX, really had a consistent approach and also commitment to really expect Thai ownership. So that was also very important element for the the growth of TPA. So this is how it worked. So lastly, let me just share the implication for industrial human resource development for Africa. I'd like to emphasize there are ample opportunities for learning to industry in Africa. We are talking to the Pamela-san, and also we will be receiving the comments from the two distinguished the panelists. I think they are also practice working with many development partners and also many foreign kind of companies. So there are many donor-supported projects, possibility for the partnership with FDI with the new technologies. So there are ample opportunities. And then it's important for this reason to create homegrown mechanism for learning and localizing foreign models. I think brain circulation, not brain drain. I think those people who had access to the foreign knowledge and technology and model can provide an important role. And for example, in the case of alumni, in the case of Thailand, played. So who studied overseas can play an important role in creating global human networks in learning technology and transfer. And then at home, those people can also create domestic network in industry, academia, and government. And then role of the development cooperation should aim at aid for graduation, not for the permanent dependency, and then respecting ownership of the partners, and then working together step by step with capacity development with a concrete support. So I think these are the implications I hope we can draw and we can discuss furthermore with the panelist members. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for a comprehensive, very detailed presentation, especially on Thailand and TPA and TNI. So I'm very much surprised of how they are developing, how they developed their courses, and also there are many implications, especially 7 success factors, and the final, the brain circulation that is maybe telling many things. Yes, sorry, thank you very much, Professor Ono. And sorry for my bad time management. So we are much behind the time. So next session is my intervention, but I would like to make this session as minimum as possible. So First, I would like to share my screen. Bridging East Asia experience with African development, just only 4 slides. So first, I'd like to mention about some takeaway, my takeaway from 2 prominent speakers. First, from Dr. Mori's presentation on the Vietnam cases. I like this table, and so this is I take from the book, and also it's also presented in his presentation. Yes, this is the list of employer engagement, especially industry engagement. So we can see, so there are many efforts have been done, and also even after the project has over, some of them, they have newly established, and some of them collapsed, but they actually selected, so we can say. So this is a kind of short list, what we can do, what they can do, or we can do when we say industry engagement. So, and also evolvement, we can see. And from Hanoi University of the Industry, I have also learned about how they do translative adaptation, especially how to localize international practices. So there are much things they have done. So taking from Japanese, taking from Western. And also for doing that, there's a strong ownership, and also various partnership, ownership and partnership we have seen. This is also the keywords which we frequently use for the Africa's development from the aspects of TVET. So I think this corresponds to also Africa's context. Next, Professor Ono's presentation on Thailand, especially Monodzukuri. So the manufacturing education with localization, like Hanoi's case, this one were much longer than they have been doing the step by step, steady, but ultimately a lot of development has been done, especially so these 5 stages. So this is what I have learned from TPA and TNI as cases. The key issues. So there are many key issues, but so grouped the enhancing TVET industry linkage in industry academia collaboration, how to make the good collaboration with industries, and also incentivize. So not just only collaborate, how to incentivize companies. Otherwise, companies cannot work on this kind of collaboration. So that is also another thing. And 6 core values also telling a lot of things, and that including Kaizen, Monodzukuri, whatever. Now, so taking from these experiences in Africa, what JICA has been doing. So in TVET, there are a lot of projects that have been done in African continent. For example, long-lasting JICA TVET project. For example, in the case of Uganda Nakawa, NBTC is from 1968, and Senegal self-pay from 1984, long-lasting. They are now already a base for the 3rd country training program for neighboring or other African countries. They have already accumulated a lot of knowledge, skills, experiences, and share with the neighboring countries in Africa. And the TVET projects are evolving. The latest one is South Africa. This South Africa's case also pursue how to work with the private companies. And the most latest one, Tanzania. This is still under preparation formulation, but if everything goes well, it can be started this year. And this project is called Marketable Industrial Human Resource Development from the beginning. So it is very much focused on the ties with the private sector industries. So for those kind of things that listed in the Dr. Mori's, the industry engagement, those are will be tested. And even beyond that, for example, taking the Tanzania's context, that they have the field attachment, FA, or industrial attachment. They have a kind of internship program. So this can be evolved. So as such and such, there are many more, but so taking the time constraints. So I'd like to next to Kaizen. Kaizen is very, very closely working with TVET. Kaizen is an approach to continuous improvement of quality and productivity. As I mentioned, AUDA-NEPAD and JICA has been working on this as the Africa Kaizen Initiative 10-year program. And so under this, the 9 project implementing countries, they are doing the project basis for a long time. And also other, at least 27 countries in Africa are involved. So, and the Kaizen itself is adopted in many TVET schools. So as we can see in the TNI cases, or TPS cases, so Kaizen is already an ingredient of their the curriculums. And also, for example, the Tanzanian cases, they also emphasize, in addition to hard skills, but soft skills are also focused, and that includes the philosophy of Kaizen. So Kaizen contributing to industrial human resource development. And finally, I think this may be used for the later discussions by the discussants, a kind of the list of food for thoughts. So we have seen the long-lasting development of technology stages. So this can be, we can dig more. And private sector's involvement and initiatives, this is tested in many ways in any projects. Various approaches for industrial engagement for technical education, I have already mentioned several times. Kaizen as a core tool for technical education in Tibet, in anywhere. And additionally, that contributions to advancement of industry under the era of digitalization or DX, Industry 4.0. So there are many aspects. So these are also tested or implemented in Tibet schools and also Kaizen projects. I also wrote in this book in my chapter 10, so these kind of things. And role of development cooperation, this has been referred by the Professor Ono. So now I will stop my intervention. So I'd like to now from on to hand over my colleague, Pamela, for the second half of the part. Thank you very much. Pamela, floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Mr. Homer-san. Thank you very much for that comprehensive overview of the 2 presentations that we have just heard from Professor Moro and Professor Ono. We have about 28 minutes to go with this segment. And I just wanted to allude to the fact that I represent again the Policy Bridge Time Program at the African Union Development Agency. And fundamentally, the role and approach is how we at the agency can utilize or approach African think tanks for their areas of expertise in order to support our programs on the new knowledge, on knowledge and best practices in order to accelerate our programs. So with that, we have 2 discussants, one representing aptly from an African think tank, and the other from who's a program head of TVET and TVET in the African Union Development Agency. I will now move on swiftly, and I just request for the discussants that I will call up, if you can just make your intervention in 10 minutes in order for us to leverage and maximize the questions from the participants and, of course, the experts on the call. Our first discussant is Mr. Ahend Achumpeng, is an international development and security professional who obtained his training from the Joseph Korber School of International Affairs at the University of Denver, as well as studied at Michigan State University. Ahend is passionate about global security and development and loves to write on emerging topics in these areas. He currently serves as the Deputy Director of the Afro-Sino Center of International Relations based in Ghana, and which is a Pan-African center which is focused on Africa-China engagements. Ahend has been a resource person to the international media organizations such as the BBC and provides insights on Africa-China engagements and South-South cooperation from an African perspective. So Ahend, as I hand the floor to you, and having gone through those presentations from the Vietnam and Thailand experience, what does this mean for Africa? There are lessons to be learned, and what Africa should be doing with regards to localizing foreign models for technical education on the continent. With that, over to you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Ms. Pamela. Thank you, Professors Uno and Professor Mori. Pamela, can you hear me clearly and can you see me clearly?
Yes, we can, and hear you
Awesome.
and see you. Thank you.
Awesome. So I'll try to be as brief as possible with my presentation. And I just want to say that the book on introducing foreign models for development, Chinese experiences and cooperation in the age of new technology is such an intriguing book. And I think it is one that African governments must pay key attention to and learn from. It was just exciting learning this, translative adaptation and all of that. It's just been an impressive work. And so Professors Uno and Professor Mori, thank you so much for this impressive work. Now, I just want to start my presentation with this in mind, and I take a quote from the book, which says that this is the first series to highlight research into the processes and impacts of the state building and economic development of developing countries in the non-Western world that have recently come to influence global economy and governance. The point I'm trying to make here is that the theories and concepts in international relations have long been shaped by and for Western contexts, making it unrealistically difficult to frame or analyze emerging economies using existing frameworks. And this point is key in understanding and also shaping how Africa can learn and also develop its industrialization agenda. So my presentation will be in three parts. I briefly talk about the policy aspects of it, the strategy, and also the collaboration. Permit me to take another quote from the book that says that to make this happen, which is Africa's or industrialization happen, however, developing countries need to strengthen their policy and societal capacity to adapt to today's interdependent and connected world, while taking into account their unique circumstances. Now, this leads me to the point of political will. I think that there's a need for a conscious effort to learn, which must be reflected in policy and efforts at implementation of these policies. Why would African countries be intentional about industrialization when industrialization is presented to be cut out to a certain section of the globe? Once the African is convinced that industrialization is within his grasp, then we can start the conversation about industrialization. Then we can talk about the role of the government. Then we can talk about the role of civil society organization, and then we can carry our private sector along. So it is important that Africans and Africans partners should begin to view Africa not just as a raw material producing economy. The international political economy frameworks that currently exist must be broken to allow for the conversation about industrialization to happen on the continent. Now, as part of the political will, the government must understand that it is their key role to industrialize the continent. And they have all admitted and accepted this in the African Union's Agenda 2063, which is the Africa we want. And so by committing to this agenda to industrialize the continent of Africa, African governments must be intentional and must understand that industrialization has become a key responsibility for them. And to do that, they need the civil society organizations to hold governments accountable and to constantly remind governments of this responsibility of transformation, and also the role of the private sector. And when we talk about the private sector, I will start by even looking at Africa's human resource, human capacity. That should be the beginning of the discussion. And also, when we talk about private sector, we have to look within before we look without. African must start to look at private sector from within. when we, in our work, you engage with private sectors, local private investors, and you say that all these laws and all these sort of policies that are made favor external investors or international investors rather than local investors. And we must start to rethink this and reconsider the role of local investors or local private sector in Africa's industrialization efforts. Now I move to the issue of strategy. And in order to, as part of our strategy to adapt and to also adopt within local and global context, we have to invest heavily, as I already mentioned, in human capital. And I believe that this is central in achieving industrialization. And it must be started early. Changing perspectives about technical and vocational education and training from the basic level will go a very long way. We need to start from the basics, and we need to start with our human resource early. One of the ways and one of the strategies we can do this is learning from Ghana's policy of changing polytechnics to technical universities. I think that this could be a way of elevating technical education and training. Once the mindset or the perception about technical education is changed at the basic level, someone knows that when I start with TVET, I can go all the way to the university level and pursue TVET. I think it would help to sort of inspire and to encourage more students to consider TVET. Also, there's another quote I love from the book that says that translative adaptation involves selectively adopting and adapting foreign knowledge and technologies to the specific conditions of the home society and the strong influence of dominant global trends. And I argue that this will require research at country levels, regional and continental levels. For Africa, countries will have to first look within the continent and then outside to identify shared characteristics and differences to development in its strategies for adoption and adaptation. We will also have to ask ourselves as Africans that how do we do it locally? Then we can ask the question, how can we enhance it with experiences from other places? External partners will have to be conscious of Kaizen, which has been talked about a lot here, which is continuous learning, to avoid the temptation of imposition of ideas, experiences, or timelines. Once again, long-term planning with efficiency and being cognizant of the widening industrialization and development gap would help Africa. Quickly running through my thoughts, I think that Africa and its partners should simultaneously build education capacity, industrial environment, and the labor market. Now, finally, when it comes to collaboration, I think that public-private partnership should look within again, and then look without. Africa needs all of its human resources, both at home and abroad. And by this, I'm making the point that diaspora engagement will go a long way in helping Africa, as Professor Mori alluded to. Now, we have to also think about investing in incubators within existing institutions. Usually, when we partner with foreign partners, we see that new institutions are created, and once the foreign partners leave, they leave with these policies and framework and institutions, and so they do not survive. And so we have to look at long-term investment, which is working with existing institutions and building their capacities to be able to work. Now, finally, I will use the example of Luban workshops, which is being spearheaded by China. So like Luban workshops, international partners should work with the existing institution as part of efforts to strengthen local capacity, as well as to localize industrialization. I would also want to talk about the issue of concrete industrial structures, which I believe can be achieved when a robust market is available or created. And here, international partners play a very important role. We need to revisit existing frameworks on international political economy, as I talked about earlier on. So Africa cannot continue to be regarded or viewed as a raw material producing economy. A change in how the rest of the world is viewed, how the rest of the world views Africa, and how the continent views itself will be important towards this effort. More importantly, African policymakers should situate policy, not within existing frameworks and narratives, but within the context of the Africa we want. And this Africa we want must be framed through African lenses and not on the benchmarks induced by Western perspectives of development and transformation. Finally, I would say that African policymakers, stakeholders, and those who are interested in Africa and the continent will have to ask themselves the following questions. What does transformed and industrialized society mean to the Africans? What are the benchmarks? How do we measure success? And where will investment come from? Finally, what strengths will these investments come with? And as we answer these questions, I'm sure that we'll be in a better position to situate and adapt and adopt knowledge in Africa's industrialization. Thank you so much, Pamela, for the opportunity to join this important discussion. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ian, for your valuable intervention. I think, it echoed clearly investment in building human capacity in the continent. I think, alluding to long-term solutions and place-based policies, basically, on how, you can measure or design policies according to the situation at hand. So thank you very much for your intervention. And as we move swiftly along, I would now like to invite my colleague and dear friend, Ms. Unami Dube, who is a Senior Program Officer at the African Union Development Agency, NEPAD. Unami is overseeing the World Skills Africa Desk Coordination with a career spanning over 25 years. She has worked in agriculture, small enterprise development, and youth skills development. She leads the initiative like Skills Initiative for Africa program, SIFA, which is a 100 million euro grant facility for revamping TVET institutions, and the Agriculture Technical Vocation Education and Training for Women. Ms. Dube holds a master's degree in strategic quality management from Portsmouth, UK, and the second master's in development practice from Pretoria University, South Africa. Her work aims to provide youth employability and economic prospects in Africa. Unami, I would like to hand over the floor to you and would like you to please help us address the bridging East Asian experience with the African development. How do you think Africa can benefit from the Asian experience that we have heard? And although not everything is adaptable, we know, but how can policies strengthen and support this link between skill sets and job opportunities, knowing specifically that in Africa, the private sector is a very small and limited market. Only about 40% of African companies employ about, just under 10 employees. And we know that this market is dominated by small, medium enterprises. So as I hand the floor over to you, thank you again for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Pamela. Please, if you could confirm that you hear me and you see me clearly. I see a glare on my side.
No, I do see you, and thank you for joining us while on leave. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's a delight and a pleasure to be joining you today. And I'm particularly excited. I'm not on holiday, Pamela, but I'm here on an initiative that will launch World Skills Africa on the continent, where Zambia will be the next host for the 2025 meeting. Now, I say that in terms of the energy of how do we, so when I listen to these presentations, I always want to place the young person in the center. What does it mean for them? And so I'm very grateful to the collaboration that has been undertaken. I am very grateful for the research that has been shared for us today. And I think I want to reflect on the value of this research in terms of what we as an implementation agency can do to help member states to learn and to glean from these experiences. So first and foremost, it's really the appreciation that As the African Union Development Agency, our mission, our mandate is to provide technical advisory support to the member states. As the skills program within the AUDA-NEPAD, how have we done this? We have a platform for knowledge exchange, for dialogue, and we also produce knowledge products, which we share, and tools, which we share with the member states. So such an opportunity for South-South exchange is very valuable to us. In terms of, I really particularly appreciated the depth of research in terms of what is working and what is not working. So allow me just to pull out some nuggets that I picked from the presentation that are common and some may not be common. And in the end, I will then speak to the initiative World Skills Africa. Now, we appreciate that this year is the year determined by the African Union as the year for transforming education and skilling. That means we really have to look down at and really consider what have we been doing, and then take our heads out of the sand and say, so how do we move forward? And I think one of the key lessons that I'm taking here is that a lot is said about TVET, but Africa is coming from the back of poor perceptions of TVET. A critical question I always ask is, how many parents in the room would ever send their children for TVET? Very few. And so our efforts have been really focused on revamping the TVET sector. So there's a lot of work in terms of addressing the supply side. The supply side focus, ensuring that the TVETs themselves have the requisite equipment, they have the up-to-date curriculum, that they have the TVET trainers themselves are well equipped to be able to transfer the necessary know-how to the students for the world of work. But what has always been a problem is the challenge of we do not have as yet the institutional base, and I think my colleague spoke to it, the platforms for TVET to engage with private sector. We have seen this a lot within our grant arrangements with the Skills Initiative for Africa, where many of the TVET institutions have not had the partnerships. Second to that is that they have not had the internal capacities to actually manage and to build up. So there is not this sufficient exchange and know-how of what is actually changing in the world of work. So our biggest challenge, and where we have also focused then, is how do you translate this into policy? And so with the African Union, we have a continental platform for where such experiences really need to be shared to a broader audience, which is called the Africa Creates Jobs. And we also will be having on the margins of the World Skills Africa, a continental-wide TVET conference, because this is where we bring the practitioners, the private sector, and the policymakers to then share and exchange what is shifting, what is not, what are the challenges, what have been some of the enablers. So relatedly, we also have what is called Aspire, which is the African Skills Portal for Youth Employment and Entrepreneurship. This is a knowledge repository that is built on the basis of best practices that we have picked from across the continent. We send out a call for expression of interest, and we inquire, and we inquire along how have you engaged with private sector? How have you transformed or designed your curriculum processes? How have you adopted, for example, your competence-based curriculum development learnings? And that, in a way, is a way in which we transfer the know-how. And from the collection of best practices, we then take it a step further and develop knowledge products as tools to disseminate. So I see a lot of value in the work that has been here presented today, in terms of how we could then reflect on what is it meant in a different context compared to a context in Africa. Africa is very diverse and the contexts are very different. But what is common to your question, Pamela, as well, is that we do not have a wide breadth of private sector. So indeed, a lot of our private sector are the small to medium enterprises who will be challenged by just the resources to be able to take on learner-based experiences for students. We'll be challenged in terms of availing time to the TVET institutions. We'll be challenged in terms of even time to participate in what they term long overdrawn policy processes. And neither do they belong to an organized system of private sector that is able to link into TVET. Nonetheless, these best practices are helping to show where there is emergence of these such platforms and what value they add. And so we are seeing in some countries where there are now sector councils. We know that there are now a strong drive towards establishment of TVET authorities to provide the regulatory framework that can begin to glean along all the scope of work that needs to be done within the ecosystem, such as the private sector engagement to ensure that the curriculum is demand-orientated, such as even just the curriculum design processes, the micro-credentialing, the short-term courses that are highly sought after by our young people, as they cannot perhaps invest in a long term, but there's also more value in getting a short-term course. I don't want to take too much more time. I think this is where I really wanted to, but I want to also underscore the issue of our TVET, as I said, is based on a low perceptions, but also on a low literacy and numeracy. So the uptake as well becomes a challenge. Let me end then with the initiative World Skills Africa and how it is also in some ways approaching the question that you have asked, Pamela. World Skills is a global movement that seeks to promote skills excellence. Within Africa, we are saying, how can we create a skills economy that helps us to link the TVET, the production of skills, to the world of work, not only to industry, but a key factor of that and that which AU and the AUDA need to be working on is how do we link to national development plans? How do we link education management systems to labor market information systems so as to create the skills economy? Secondly, how can we help transform the TVET institutions from a focus only on qualifications to occupational standards and provide a means of benchmarking so as to broaden skills mobility and skills portability on the continent? And last but not least, World Skills as a movement also affords a space for competitions where young people are able to showcase and be exposed to leadership development, as well as attitude change, as well as the practical skills and know-how, but also brings on board this industry to present the equipment, to train the TVET experts. And so we're looking at working with the regional economic communities to develop regional centers. And we would really be interested to see how some of the learnings that have been shared here, that are espoused in the book, can also lead to some of the theories of change that we'll be developing, basing on what has worked and what has not worked. So we're very grateful for the opportunity to have this exchange. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Unami. That was indeed a real, holistic approach on how you are tackling TVET in your programs. And I'm really, really excited to see how the space develops, and also learning, from the ASEAN experiences. Also a point echoed by our colleague Ebenezer from Kufu Policy Institute. Thank you for your comment, which indicates great and insightful topic. The Asian TVET models presented can be benchmarked to build a comprehensive and sustainable industrialization strategy for African countries. Thank you for that comment. And we will, as AUDA-NEPAD, together with my colleague Unami, will endeavor to partner. And of course, I am in the industrialization space institutionally as well. And of course, the idea of skills development and training is pertinent to that space. So quickly, without any further ado, there are just two burning questions that I would like to handle and take into this discussion that is posed from the audience. One is, I think maybe we can allude to Mr. Mori, Professor Mori, and that is how to apply the translative adaptive method to learn from Japanese agricultural development example, irrigation system mechanism for all other countries, especially with specifically different context, preferably for Myanmar, if possible, if you could do that, and how it would be important to know the development experiences to apply this concept to Myanmar using translative adaptation as a framework, understanding that we are operating in different contextual environments, and what are some of these differences between Japan and Myanmar that we see that challenges the research that you have done. So over to you, Professor Mori.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Pamela. It's a interesting but a difficult question too. So about the agricultures. So first of all, because my specialty is agriculture, but the translative adaptation can be applied to the various sectors too. So of course, to be honest, my knowledge about the African context is not enough. Probably Professor Ono can add a comment. However, what is very important is what can be applied and then what cannot be applied. In agriculture, maybe like I don't know, in Japan, probably use more machines, but Africa, more manual labor, that could be possible reason. But there are some common knowledge can be applied. So the issue is, for example, if I just think about the experience in Vietnam, so in the vocational training schools in Japan, if one cutting tool is broken, what the instructor do is they replace buying the new tools. But in Vietnam, it is difficult to buy a new tools. So what they do is they just sharpen the tools or try to repair the tools. So of course, in Japan, there is a previous experience like that, but now young people forget it. So sometimes like a senior people knows. So maybe this can be still learns each other's. But the interesting thing is sometimes like a Japanese instructor went to the Vietnamese vocational college. Somehow like they learn, oh, they can still repair this. So it's more like a mutual knowledge, how this mutual learning could happen in a different context. So again, I'm quite sure there's something transferable from the Japanese experience, but as the Professor Ono already said, I think it is like a core knowledge sharing, not like a one-way transfer, because what I saw is many, including myself, the Japanese vocational training instructor staff learned a lot working in Vietnam, or in my case, Malaysia too. Then we create something new. So that could be possible. But maybe, I don't know, Professor Ono may want to add.
Before I go,
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Professor.
Yeah, if I can say a few words, regarding translative adaptation of agricultural development from Japan to Myanmar, I think it's a very big questions, big issues. I think agriculture itself is a very broad, even for like when we are talking about today the topic of industrialization, but we are talking about industrial human resource development and then industry TVET kind of engagement. There are many specific issues you want to tackle. So I think when you talk about agricultural development, I think it's important to first identify what are the major issues Myanmar wants to tackle in agricultural development, either crop diversification or technology or extension service. So it's important to identify the priority issues, and then based on the priority issues, which country you can learn, because each country can offer different models, and then you need to find out that which country you want to benchmark. For example, I'm not the agriculture expert, but when we have been working with Ethiopia, they want to develop apparel industries. But we are not recommending Japanese way because Japan no longer has a kind of those have a factory so much. But we have recommended to look at the Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Vietnam, in Myanmar with a different stage of apparel sector development. And then, so I think we have to find out that much more in go into detail, what are your critical issues you want to tackle in agricultural development? And then what are the maybe available model you want to look at? So identify the benchmarking countries and then to learn from them. And then what are the common issues? What are the difference? That is a very important thing. So what we have wanted to talk about in this translative adaptation is not just copying whatever the model Japan has. I think you need to be selective based on the particular problem your country face. So I think understanding the issues of your countries, and then based on that, looking at the various kind of example in other country, that kind of learning or process itself is important. This is why we think the 3 steps and methodology for learning is very important. So sorry, I just spoke in the very general terminology. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Thank you, Professor. Very quickly from a participant that's sitting in Vietnam, they say that Vietnam has a low involvement, including employment, in the export share of foreign companies entering the country. It is necessary to expand its supporting industries, and they believe that that is, of course, government's role. But how do we address this from a TVET perspective, where there is limited interaction between TVET institutions and the industry? If you can just share your insights on that question.
Maybe Mori-san?
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. So supporting industry is another area I'm passionate. So I guess the question is about the role of the TVET, what role of TVET can play in for the supporting industry development and then what they can do. So there are a lot of things. We need to understand the industry skills needs of the suppliers, which are mostly SMEs. Of course, some Japanese investors are there. Their companies are relatively big, but for us, still the medium or small size companies. So their skills needs often quite different from the needs of the large assemblers. That's something we need to think about. For example, if we just listen to the needs from the large company like Toyota, Honda, by the way, they are a great company, but often they say that they need the people with a good management skill. They need the people with a problem-solving skill. But when I talk with parts suppliers, a small and medium company, they said what they need is those who have very basic engineering or technical skills, backed up by the theoretical skills like machining or electric and electric. That's very substantial. So we need to understand what's the difference between skills needs between supporting industry and then like assembler or large company. That's one point. Another thing is although I've been in a vocational training sector, we often think about the technical skills. So of course, a hot topic is the digital skills, like green skills, how in relation to the climate change. Those are very important. But often we need to come back to the balancing the general skills and then a specific skill in a TVET too. I fully understand, like often in a TVET institution, training time is limited. Teacher always have a constraint, but strengthening the general skills are also very important too, because general skills means like a problem solving skills, but also like quite basic scientific knowledge like physics and so on. Because this is for the long-term perspective. Often like supporting industry or SME recruit TVET graduate, not only as a worker, but they want to progress their career to the manager and so on. Large company, it's okay. They recruit like prominent university graduate. But for small and medium enterprise, they are different. But to step up the careers, of course, technical skills are important, but the general skills like problem solving, basic scientific knowledge, those are important. So somehow TVET needs to balance it too. So that's something in context of the Vietnam we need to think about for the supporting industry development.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Professor Mori. I like to look at it as the triple helix model, where we have government, where we have the TVET institutions, and then we have the industry that should actually be in discussion, and that's what you're alluding to. The last 2 questions I'm going to pose to Professor Ono If Professor Uno can just try to answer a little bit on both of them, and then I want to hand over to my both colleagues if they have any last comments before I hand over for closing. So the first question is how human resource capacity building was ensured in CPA to manage increasing number of institutions engaging in the project. And then the second one is how can we connect the Monodzukuri with entrepreneurship in low-income conflict-stricken countries, while youth employment is the best way for preventing violent extremism. Employment opportunities are extremely limited in these countries. So, Professor Ono, I hope I was clear with those two questions. If you want to make your intervention, thank you.
Could you explain the first question again? Maybe I cannot catch.
The first question is how human resource capacity building was ensured in CPA to manage increasing number of institutions.
I see. Maybe this is for Mori-san. Yeah, that the presentation. Okay. Yeah. So Mori-san goes first, then I will take the second one. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. So I think our question is about the Center for the Enterprise Partnership with Hanoi University of Industry. Number of the partner increase, how to manage it. So what the Hanoi University of Industry senior management did is that they started small, again, like always resources limited. So they allocated, if I remember correctly, 3 staff first for the Center for the Enterprise Development. And then demonstrating a result, senior management gradually increased number of the staff. So, and then from a JICA side, actually we recommended our former project staff to be a Hanoi University of Industries member. Of course, the decision is up to them, but luckily they recruited. So like our former staff acted as an agent of the JICA in the beginning in the Hanoi University of Industry. But after that, this is not what I said, but what they said to me. They basically try to promote a self-learning between in the center of the enterprise partnership development, because one experienced staff need to share the experience with the other staff, how to deal with the enterprise. In this case, how to deal. For example, like some company may ask a lot of the question, how to answer, how they communicate. So basically, they do the peer-to-peer learning. Experienced staff teach to the another staff. And then also they did a self-learning. They said like they utilize the teaching or training material we develop, and then they utilize those material for the internal training. I'm very sure they changed or adapted those training material in their context. I'm very sure they adapted selectively. Maybe they said like one of the material I developed not very useful, but this one is useful. So I think they did a selection in themselves. So that's what they told to me. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Professor Ono, would you like me to look
So
at
let
that
me,
question? Okay.
yeah. Second question is how to make the TVET kind of functionable in the fragile context, right? When that the violence and also those social difficulties that exist. Okay, this is a very challenging question. I will say that maybe Tibet institution play a very important role in preparing for the workforce. At the same time, I think we need to understand maybe 2 different contexts. One is for human resource development for industrial competitiveness is one thing. The other is maybe industrial human resource development, maybe for social stability, social integration. I think there are 2 different maybe levels of that dimension, but at the same time, Tibet played a very important role in 2 functions. I think what we talk about today in the East Asian context is that the Tibet industrial human resource development for the competitiveness and productivity and the industrial excellence. At the same time, there may be some countries, maybe in the case of some countries in Africa, those conditions may not be met. At the same time, peace building process. I think, like Tibet can also play an important role in the disarmament and DDR process. I think those people can provide a means, a skill to be integrated into the society, which provide a basis for the social stabilities and also hope for the future. So in that sense, in a different way from what we discussed today, Tibet institution can play an important role. But the question is, to what extent private sector can be linked up with this, right? Because in the fragile society, that the peace building process, not so many private sector activities are, there. So it may not be so easy to link up with other business opportunities. But I think, whatever the condition, I think there are some industrial activities like construction or mechanical, like repairing. There are some industrial activities and services, and then try to find out what that the sector country needs right now, and then based on the labor market survey, those, and then try to prepare for those people, and then that could at least provide a first kind of step for finding that the job which is that the society is needed. And then in some country, for example, in Bangladesh, there are problem with the Myanmar Rohingya people that are coming. But I think in some Japanese company like Uniqlo is working with international organization like UNHCR to provide some skill training for the Rohingya people in the camp, so that they could kind of do some sewing and thing, and they can share those things among the communities. So some private sector may have an interest through corporate social responsibility in doing that. So try to find out various opportunities locally, and also maybe try to identify some international partner, either international organization or some companies, and then try to really link up with Tibet activities, even in the fragile context. This is what I think. Thank you very much.
Professor Ono, very quickly, you spoke about brain drain versus brain circulation.
Yeah, okay.
And one of the questions, Africa has many intellectuals and technicians. How do we overcome this brain drain? And are there any practical examples, either from other countries or from Japan, about this? Maybe you want to quickly.
I see. Okay. Brain drain is a very, I think that very many country faces, but maybe Japan didn't face so many brain drain problem. But when we talk about like South Korea, it was a long time ago. But when South Korea was recovering from like a Korean War, I think that the president at that time, Park Chung-hee, really took initiative in inviting those people, Korean people who are abroad, to come back, and then try to invite them in a very kind of in a better incentives, and also try to integrate invite them to commit their country's development. So I think in terms of Rwanda, for example, I think after the tragic histories, but I think president also took initiative to invite diaspora people, and also link up, inviting that some of the people who are working in the United States to come back to the government with maybe some good incentives to work for the countries. So I think that the national leadership commitment makes a lot of changes in kind of setting up the direction for your countries, and then providing opportunities, and then seriously that the commitment. I think there are some examples, not only in East Asia, but also in Africa, how to really get the commitment of the diaspora people. So I think those kind of seriousness of the national ownership is very critical to start up.
Thank you, Professor Ono. To my other colleagues, Unami and Arind, if you can maybe just switch your cameras off. I just want to make a last comment that is coming out from the participants. As we have, horizontal and vertical value chains, they want us to explore horizontal and vertical knowledge in this area. They feel data is not enough and insufficient, and of course the poor or lack of coordination between industry and skills. So, Unami, I'll start with you. If you have any thoughts on that, and Aaron will hear from you, and then I will hand over to Yamada-san. Onami, is there any thoughts on that comment?
Absolutely.
Regarding?
Absolutely. No, thank you for the question. And I think some of the efforts that we are embarking on are how to better align demand and supply. And this can be done through strengthening skills forecasting and anticipation strategies, mechanisms that can help us to better align our labor market demand through creating better linkages of the vocational training systems. We also need to put in a lot of effort in terms of aligning skills development plans to the national development plans and perhaps really focus on sector-driven approaches to drive occupational needs of sectors. And last but not least, I would say African countries need to start piloting. We need to, as you say, vertical and horizontal. We need piloting, test and try, build on the existing best practices and see what emerges. Ultimately, what we are working towards is, can we have a system-wide approach for responsive and agile TVET systems? That is the only way we'll be able to harness the opportunities of the industrialization drive and of the AFCTFA that is emerging upon us on the continent. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Nami. I hand over to you.
Yes, Pamela, can you please take the last part of the question? I lost the voice.
Just
at that
the
point.
comment, how we have industrialization, horizontal and vertical processes, and the question was about, or the comment was about looking into research in a horizontal and vertical approach as well, to match the industry versus skill sets.
Right, yes, I think that is a very great comment to make. And that is one of the things in our meeting in Addis that came up and that we talked about, the mismatch, right, when it comes to the skill set and also the labor market. And I think that here, again, if African countries decide to look within and to, based on research, to look at what the gaps are in terms of skills and also what the labor market demands, then I think we can be making some headway. I think one of the things that international partners can also do, key role, is also streamlining scholarships. We know that a lot of African students are now studying outside the continent, like China, Japan, and the African students are now moving from the West to the global South for their education. And I think this is where universities in the South can now begin to say that, how do we intentionally get these students to come in, study programs that are relevant to them in their home countries. And that will be useful in terms of also, again, getting the diaspora to come in to support. Because sometimes the issue of brain drain, when it comes up, I ask the question about brain waste, right? Because sometimes the brains are not utilized on the continent and they have to go out to be used and to be seen before their governments invite them back in. And after they have been invited back in, they realize that the environment does not help them to function because of the gaps in, say, the technological environment, right? So they don't have the equipment, they don't have the systems to support the knowledge base. And we have to think about it this way as well. So I hope that as we continue to, based on research, look at the gaps within the continent, our partners can also take that conscious effort to see how they can support our students who are coming to their countries to study skills that will be relevant to them in their home countries. And I guess that would be my thoughts on that. Thank you so much, Pamela.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. My segment is over, and I would just like to use this opportunity to thank our esteemed panelists. Thank you so much for your time. And I personally want to thank JICA Ogata Research Institute, together with Professor Ono's team, to put together such a wonderful book. And I encourage all those participants who haven't read the book yet, please access this through the link that is provided in the chat. I think you could start off the year with a very interesting read on this book. So thank you very much for me. And I want to hand over now to Manori Yamada-san, who will deliver the closing remarks. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you, Pamela-san. So I try to be brief. So on behalf of the JICA team, I would like to thank all of you for joining today's webinar on industrial engagement in Tibet. As mentioned by previous speakers, this is the third joint webinar co-organized by AUDA-NEPAD Policy Bridge Tank and the JICA Ogata Research Institute. So the first one was on industry policy, and the second one was on quality and product improvement or kaizen. So compared with the two previous events, I think today's webinar is more focused on Asia. We hope the two Asian cases in Vietnam and Thailand and the following discussions provided useful lessons for your future academic or practical endeavors. And particular, because the main interest of our research is about translative adaptation, we are very happy if today's discussion somehow contribute to the localization of the Asian experiences for promoting Tibet and also industrial linkage in African countries. And actually, contribution to African development through such knowledge sharing or knowledge co-creation, as mentioned in the discussion. So this is the aspiration of JICA or Japan's Development Corporation as a whole. In this sense, I would say we are very fortunate that we had a very reliable partners with strong Africa background. First, we appreciate the very insightful input from the two discussants, Ahin-san and Unami-san. So your comments surely facilitated interpretation of our Asian cases through the African perspective. And also, I would like to thank Policy Bridge Tank, of course, Pamela-san, Honma-san, and other colleagues for mobilizing such great knowledgeable experts, and also coordinating and publicizing today's event. And so that means our research team members also learned quite a lot from the discussions. And unfortunately, I think not all of the questions were fully addressed. So we continue to think about all the comments and the questions from the floor. Thank you very much for that. And finally, as introduced by Professor Ono, recently we published comprehensive research outcomes in the form of a Springer book, but this does not mean our research has completed. So building upon today's discussions, we continue our activities. And so I'd like to publicize something. So in relation to today's topic, so Mori-san is now finalizing another book focused on industrial human resource development. So this volume, of course, includes today's topic or Hanoi University for Industry, but so that includes some more additional cases. And actually, as Unami-san mentioned, some issues, qualification or occupational standards issues, that is some of the topics the new volume will be covering. So in that sense, we really look forward to announcing the publication of the new book. And also, maybe with the help of Policy Bridge Tank, we also would like to disseminate the contents of the new book in the very near future. Okay, thank you again for joining today and wishing further collaboration in the future. I would like to close today's webinar. Thank you very much again. So over to you, Pamela-san.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yamada-san, for that. To all our participants who have joined us from far and wide, thank you. You're please encouraged to do a brief survey that is in the link on the chat. And we really appreciate your time. Despite we were gone over our time limit, I think the discussions were very rich and we learned a lot today. So thank you very much. And I wish you a productive year ahead. Thank you and stay well.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.